Okay, so you want to start game dev. I'm sure you know this by now, but creating a game from scratch is really hard. It takes time and skill. There's no way around it. So let's start. Every seasoned game developer is going to have multiple applications running while they are working on their game, switching back and forth between asset creation, game creation, and coding. So making games requires you to have a ton of software for creating, managing, and tweaking all kinds of aspects of your game. But in the long run, you are incorporating these assets into a single piece of software, that is your engine. Now obviously, there's a ton of different engines to create games with. There is Unity, Unreal, and Godot, just to name a few. But this part is just preference. You need to understand that no matter what engine you are using, the root will be the same for all of them. Now there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them, but in my opinion, Unity or Godot is the easiest to learn and is a decent tool in creating indie games and also AA games. So if you are looking at making a AAA game, maybe your dream open world game, then Unreal might be a better bet. But I won't be looking into that. So if you are looking for the creation of the next GTA or any AAA game title, you are in the wrong place. But nothing to fear, you still can learn the basics. I want to dedicate this channel to showcase the fundamentals of game development using Godot and Unity for the most part. Occasionally, there will be more generic videos about programming principles that could be useful in your game dev journey. You'll also need some extra software for making the artwork, or 3D models, or music and sound, and etc. I will be making a whole video on what I think the best free software for game development is, so definitely check that out if you're interested on what software you should get. Now, it's time for the fun part, making your first project. And it's actually quite simple. Your first project should be a clone project. Ever heard of Flappy Bird, Space Invaders, Doodle Jump, or some classics like Pong or Snake? Well, recreating a basic game is the best way to help you understand the fundamentals of programming, setting up the artwork, and actually making a project from start to finish. Instead of trying to come up with something groundbreaking or something new, you can focus your energy on learning the basics. So the main key to take from this is to copy and understand that you are learning with this and not stealing. Okay, so the first step should be to create a classic game. But where should I start? How do I learn to do that? Great question. And the answer is pretty simple. Go around looking for YouTube tutorials. There is plenty to choose from, and you can subscribe to this channel because there is a ton of learning material coming. There are some video series that you can follow along from start to finish. It's really that easy. I know it sucks, but stick with it. Alternatively, you can buy a course that you follow through, although this can often be lengthy and slow, making it harder to complete. And if you're still scratching your head after you followed some weird snake tutorial, that's okay. It takes time for all the information to click, so either rewatch the series for a more thorough education, or just find a different series. But the main thing is that you're following and learning. Also, if you're not using visual scripting, then you should definitely be learning some coding fundamentals as well. Things like what are variables and how do arrays work. So, you're working on your first clone project, following tutorials, and it's almost certain you'll hit a roadblock at some point. The great thing about tutorial series is that you can revisit and rewatch parts where you made mistakes. But when you eventually start creating your own projects, it's crucial to learn how to find solutions on your own. The easiest and most effective way to do this, and it might sound obvious, is to search online. You'd be surprised how many people overlook this. For beginners, I'd say 99% of your questions have already been asked and answered somewhere online. Personally, 9 times out of 10, I've been able to resolve programming issues simply by looking them up. It's really that straightforward. Another invaluable resource is the documentation or manual for your game engine. These manuals explain exactly what specific functions do. In many cases, like with Godot, the manual is integrated into the engine itself. All I need to do is click on a function, and instantly I can read its details. If reading isn't your favorite thing, especially if you're younger, it might feel overwhelming at first, but don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. It took me some time too. If you're feeling ambitious, you can even explore the manual just for fun. I've done this plenty of times and discovered features in my engine that I had no idea existed. So trust me, read the manual. It's packed with valuable insights. Eventually though, you'll come across a problem that doesn't have an obvious answer online. When that happens, I recommend joining a game development forum, or better yet, one dedicated to your specific engine, and asking your question there. Just make sure to follow a few key steps. Read the forum's rules carefully, check if your question has already been asked, provide enough context, and share your code. And most importantly, brace yourself, because sometimes you might get roasted. So you might be wondering, what's next? Start by experimenting with the game you've already created. Add a new mechanic or tweak something to make it your own. Once you're comfortable, begin working on small, original projects. At this stage, you'll probably still rely heavily on tutorials, like figuring out how to pick up a coin in Godot, for example. But the goal is to start understanding how the logic and code work together, so you can build games that align with your ideas. Ultimately, there's no secret formula or magic shortcut to making games. It's about building a solid foundation through learning, experimenting, and practicing. It takes time, and sometimes it can feel tedious, but game development is incredibly rewarding and absolutely worth the effort, so don't hesitate. Keep experimenting and trying new things.